Welcome to Toot Your Own Horn, Music Matters. Today I'm here with Dave Richardson. Welcome, Dave.
Well, afternoon. Hi.
I am so happy to have you on this episode, and I am so excited to hear your story. Would you start at the beginning and tell us how you chose your instrument?
Well, I didn't exactly choose it. It was chosen for me. I actually wanted to play cello. I didn't have a burning desire to be a clarinet player. My mom went to the meeting of all the parents of kids that were going to be in the band class, and she came back and said, "Well, you're going to play clarinet because my good friend has a clarinet left over from her daughter attempting it, and it's cheap and available. So there you are. You're playing clarinet." And I don't wanna make it sound like, I was forced or it wasn't really a good choice for me. I've noticed that over the years talking to friends that, play various instruments, they may have had reasons, but it wasn't a great reason. It was, my friend played it, I liked the color of it, you know, I wanted to sit next to so and so in the band, things like that. So, I don't put a lot of emphasis on the importance of that. I think it's more important just to get there and start playing. My life and my work was as a dealer for motorcycles and scooters, and people would say, "Well, what's the right thing to start on?" I said, "Just get something and ride it." Similarly, just get a horn and toot it. I mean, once you're playing, you might decide, "Well, I like to play that better," or "I like the sound of that one." Things like that will come up. So yeah, my feeling is just get in there and get involved and see where it leads you from there.
So, your mom was obviously a great influence on you, and you trusted her.
Well, yeah, in fact, a lot to do with me progressing in music had to do with my family. I was an only child, older parents, they weren't all that, kind of involved in my life, but we had Christmas gatherings with other family members, and as soon as they started playing clarinet, my two uncles that we would always have Christmas with, they were performing musicians in dance bands. And so it was a requirement that I would play with the family band. And so rather just play the rather simplistic things that you face as a new student of music in class, I got to play some real music and it kind of advanced me a little bit and it made it more interesting. So I really felt that some lucky things happened that really got me going early on. And then plus my parents signed me up for lessons fairly early. I think I was in middle school at the time. And again, it wasn't that I was looking to be a professional musician or I had any great ideas of my abilities, but it just made it all work better for me. And in fact, I was sort of a not well socialized, not popular kid, but music became sort of my superpower. It was the one thing I did well, and it gave me confidence in really everything that I did. I knew that if nothing else, I could go back to what I felt like when I was playing music.
That's awesome. When your family played at Christmas, was that a happy time? Was it fun to play with your relatives?
Oh, absolutely. Although it could be frustrating. I remember in particular when you're learning music, it's pretty cut and dried, and you're shown that this particular note has such and such a length, and this one does all this kind of thing. So I'm sitting down with my uncle, and he's having me play the old Glenn Miller jazz song "In the Mood." And to look at the way the music is written, it's just straight eighth notes. It's da 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 da. Of course, to hear how it's played, it's ba da 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 da. But the way it's written, it doesn't look like that. And my uncle would say, "Well, you're not playing it right." He'd play it on the piano and put the emphasis on the swing style. And I'd say, "No, it's not right, Uncle Joe. It's da 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 da." And he'll be practically in the point of tears. And that was kind of my first point of realizing that there's interpretation, there's style, there's far more than just being able to play all the notes correctly. And that was part of the sneaky part of music is that you start off with just, "No, here's the note. Here's how you finger it. You blow and the note comes out. You're done." No, no, no. You spend your life trying to play that better and better. And there's no point at which you feel like you play perfectly. You're always learning to play better. There's a famous line where the great cello player Pablo Casal was asked, why, sir, you're 93 years old and you're still practicing. Why do you do that? And he said, "Well, I feel that I'm making progress." So it's a never-ending process, and at any point, you can feel good about what you're doing, but you still feel like you can do better. So it's kind of a lifelong thing to play music. And for me, I mean, I very rarely had any feeling that I could be something in music. I could go on, I could be a symphony player or something like that. I always just had the feeling like, no, it's something I'd like to do in my life, but I'm just going to be an amateur. I'm just going to play for fun. And even at that level, it's something that it just always is part of you, and it's always growing.
So, as an only child and what you said was not the most popular kid in school, how did that affect your desire to practice and to be involved in music on a ongoing basis? And did you keep playing into adulthood?
Well, strange thing was that, I was a good player, but I was never motivated at it. If I had been pushed, maybe I would have gone to study clarinet performance. I don't know. My high school director said that he felt I had all the right tools that I could have done that. But I didn't have the motivation personally. I didn't have the drive from my parents, teachers, or anything. So that just wasn't a thing for me. I did have this moment in high school where my director had given me this solo piece to do. And this was like in January with the concert coming up in May. And he says, "Here we go. We're going to do this in the May concert." And we didn't practice it again for several months. And I thought, well, he must not really meant that. We're not really going to do that. And then 2 weeks before the concert, he pulls it out again. And I looked at him and said, I thought you were kidding. I gave it all the attention that a kid would give a term paper. I'm not going to do it till I have to. So I had to work like heck to get that done. And the performance came out well, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. And it wound up being a point in my life that caused a reoccurring dream that I occasionally have this dream that I'm given a piece of music and I have to stand up and play it. I have like 3 days to learn it. The world conspires against me. I never have a free moment to work on it. And then I have to stand up there and play it. And it's sort of like this recurring nightmare of that particular moment. And I went on to play in community bands for most of my life. I probably played close to 40 years in the same community band. I quit playing in 2017, and I have to say I was never passionate about it. It was just something I did, like being in a bowling league or something like that. You get together with the guys on Thursday night, and this is what you do. That was as much as music was for me. But then after COVID, I decided to go back and try it again, and I'm playing with a community band that's part of a community college. There's a lot of young people in the band. I realized it had been 50 years since I had played that solo piece. And I thought, why don't I repeat it now? And then I can be showing them that music is something that you don't have to give up when your life gets busy. It's something you can always find a place for. And it was my chance to redeem myself and redo this piece and try to do it more perfectly. I have to say I did it better, but it still had its faults, partly because I'm old enough now that the fingers don't move like they did when I was 17 years old. But it also brought to me, kind of for the first time in my life, a passion for playing, because in preparing to do this piece better than before, I signed up for lessons, which I hadn't been since I was, in college the first time, probably 18 years old. And I had a good teacher, and she inspired me, and that got me interested in doing more and more with music. So I wound up buying an orchestral clarinet, what's called an A clarinet, finding a community orchestra that wanted me, and then finally, now I'm in a band and an orchestra. And then the orchestra had to call for occasionally some different size clarinets. And that had never been an interest to me. I just thought that the normal soprano clarinet was the important instrument. We got to play melody all the time. All those other were just here to support us. And then I started to realize that, hey, some of these supporting parts are kind of interesting, especially after playing the same soprano part all the time. So I wound up having a whole range of clarinets, and I now play in two community bands and a community orchestra. I have 8 different size clarinets, and some of them, they're not like just collector things. Within this very month, I've performed on 7 out of 8 of them, and these different groups. And it's just become my thing to do like never before in my life. So I guess I'm a late bloomer.
Yeah. Well, let's go back for a minute. So, what's interesting about your story is that you didn't stop playing through your career, and you said that you owned a motorcycle dealership. Is that correct?
Correct.
And well, most people, when they get into their main part of their career and they have a family or they get married, they stop. Then is there a reason why you didn't? Because you also said it wasn't the most passionate thing, but it was like going bowling. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, it was interesting, but not a passion. So I would play in this community band for 3, 4 years at a time, and then maybe I'd stop for a quarter or a year or 2 years, and then I'd come back to it. It was just something that was always an interest, but it wasn't a passion. So it's a little hard to describe. I mean, if I had been more aware of all the possibilities, it might have drawn me more. When I first got out of school, there was not a common thing of having community bands like there is today. We didn't have the internet then, so the world full of music and the easy way of connecting with other people and forming groups and playing music. I mean, today, a kid playing in school, you've got the whatever the school offers in music, but you can also get together with your friends and form little bands I can download for free arrangements for 2, 3, 4 people, different instruments, different levels, different styles. It just makes the whole thing of playing music a more available thing to people today than what I experienced.
So was the social aspect of it really a draw at that time?
Uh, I don't know that, but there's something interesting that came up about that. A few years ago, we had a reunion, actually in the very room I'm sitting in right now, of the people I went to high school with and played in band. And we went around the table just saying, well, what were the experiences that you remember from that time? And more than one kid, people that weren't really like notable band players, they were, people that liked it, but they weren't like standout players, would say, well, band for me was my safe haven. It was the one place in school where I felt safe. I didn't feel like I didn't fit in. And part of it is that in a band class, it's not so much like trying to learn another page of math today. We're just trying to progress how we do something. And it's one of the rare things that a person does in school that is all about cooperation. And I think cooperation is a very important skill and part to live in society, to be in a relationship, to have a job, to have a career, anything. And we don't really teach cooperation in a great way. And so to play music, you're both doing your personal part to do your part better. And then, not blasting your part because you're the best player or your part's important. It's that you have to blend with these other people. And now is the time that your part must show. And this is the time when you must back up other people. It's a very wonderful way to teach just basic skills and community. Uh, and then the fact that band is a little looser than most classes, and of course, one of the best things about band in high school is you usually get to do a band tour, and we won't even talk about the social aspects of being on a band tour, but yeah, it's definitely a consider.
Yeah. So was that the reoccurring theme among your friends when you were at the high school reunion that they all felt that it was a safe place for them?
Absolutely. It was the kind of thing that I was surprised to hear mentioned because I'd never heard that vocalized. And then once it was said, everybody just chimed in about what part of it to them really made it that special place.
Mhm. Yeah. That's really interesting 'cause, I think that that could be, a safe haven for a lot of people at a lot of different points of inflection in their lives and not always having to stop when they're in their, college years and then picking it back up later in life. Because I think there's a lot of moments in life when you can use that kind of safety net.
Right. And it's one of those classic things, and we're certainly dealing with a lot in schools locally right now. Is band music something that needs to be kept in the curriculum? And they argue, well, it's too expensive because you have to have all those instruments and all that. And the teachers argue back, well, but I can have 80 kids in one classroom rather than 25. And it goes back and forth, and then they say, well, it's not a necessary skill for getting a job. And others will say, well, we're not necessarily here to teach you skills to be little workers. But like I say, I think that the importance of having art in your life and having a sense of communication and cooperation are very important. And today's youth, I can't necessarily speak for. They're a whole different group than I was, but I know that they are less likely to be social with each other in person and more likely to be electronically. So to have something where you really get together and then do something together, I think is a good important skill. I heard something in the tech world. Of course, I live near Seattle, and there's a lot of Microsoft, Amazon people here. Someone talking about starting a new program project, and they were asked to all come together into this room and have a group meeting. And one of them said, "Well, couldn't we just do this over email? I'm kind of uncomfortable with this, personal meeting stuff." So, I just get the feeling that the whole idea of being in a room together and cooperating is not as common as it used to be.
Yeah, it's really a shame because I think you're right that it's a very undervalued or under-recognized skill, and yet when people go to hire or people look for excellence, it's something that is on the evaluation list and is something that people consider greatly as far as if that person can truly contribute to the team.
No, indeed. I'd like to say something that I don't know if this would be allowed here, and maybe this sound like a plug, but in my process of coming back and getting deeper into playing clarinet than I had been, I had this inspired moment where I bought my orchestral clarinet and then bought several others, and I decided to shop eBay and find quality name, instruments made by the name manufacturers that I remembered from working in a music store back in the early 1970s. And more recently, I realized, well, these old instruments don't last forever. Uh, they change over time. They don't play as well in tune. Finally decided that I needed to upgrade my instruments, and I didn't want to spend the money that a good name brand new instrument would be as just a retired guy playing for fun. So I believe that there had to be instruments that were made by other manufacturers that were quality instruments. Not, I mean, there are things that my clarinet teacher refers to as clarinet shaped objects, CSOs, that, you can buy them off of like Amazon. You can buy a clarinet for $68. You can pick it up and play it, but cannot play it with other people because it wouldn't play tune. So I'm thinking there's got to be something that are instruments that are quality, but they're not from those name companies, and they can really fill all these needs that I have, which is a good tone of free blowing and nice dynamic playing, easy to finger, and most important, play in tune. And with the Curio line that you offer through Lisa's Clarinet Shop, I found those. I have three of my instruments I have replaced with stereo clarinets, and I'm delighted with the difference. So I just wanted to say, for someone who's looking for an instrument to step up from a beginner instrument or replace an old one that I guess you have professionals playing them too, but I would think you have mostly people looking for the intermediate horn or the amateur's professional horn. Boy, I think they're just fantastic instruments.
Yeah, we were motivated to make them primarily because we wanted to see more people be able to have access because the instrument manufacturers have gotten to be very pricey to get a professional quality instrument. And our concern is that you can't fall in love with something in a world where everything's delivered on demand without it being of extreme quality, right? And so you have to have something really excellent to get inspired by and also to start to know the difference between you and your instrument. 'Cause a lot of times, whether you're a young person or an older person in your development, in your age development, right? It's regardless of age, it's sort of your musical development. You don't always know the difference between what you can't do and what your instrument can't do.
Yeah, and that was part of it. I mean, I had this incredibly embarrassing moment a year ago. Um, I had been recommended by my private teacher to a local opera company, and I was in 2 or 3 rehearsals, and then I get this email at midnight one night from the director saying, "Well, we're replacing you. You don't play well enough in tune."
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about just a shattering moment. But you know, I've always said, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And this was
Exactly.
one of my opportunities to live up to that. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about playing with amateur and what I was doing to make the instrument in tune or not in tune. And I finally came to realize my problem is largely not me, it's my instrument.
Right.
And so that's where I became fanatical to say, if I'm going to replace these instruments, it's going to be with something that plays in tune. And and that's what first brought me to meet you at a clarinet gathering and realize that you had some things to offer that were of interest.
Yeah, it is really true. It's funny, we share a story like that because when I was at Northwestern University, my freshman year, I played piano very seriously when I went to Interlochen Arts Academy, and I also played clarinet, but clarinet was not my main instrument, it was primarily piano. I got really high on the pool audition list, so I got into a very good ensemble at the end of my freshman year. And John Painter, in front of the entire band, stopped the band and he said, my name was Lisa Argyris. Lisa Argyris, if you cannot play in tune, you will be sitting there for no more than 30 seconds longer. And just embarrassed me to no end, right? And I left there and all I did was work with the tuner like religiously, like I wouldn't leave the tuner until I was able to play in tune with myself. And it is a thing. It is a moment. Pitch and learning how to vocalize and play expressively, but play in the center of the pitch is a thing you have to learn, and you need an instrument that can do that.
Indeed. Well, and I also saw that one of my failings was that because I hadn't been a clarinet performance student in college, I never played ensemble music. I played in band. Well, in band, you have something that we would call the average pitch. You know, there's one two instruments. It's like saying two oboes or two E flat clarinets were always going to sound out of tune. But if you get three or more, then they get an average pitch. Well, yeah, you get by with that in band. But when you're playing an ensemble where there's two, three, four of you, and you each have a unique part, being in tune with those other players is huge. And you know, I have friends now that they grew up being clarinet people, so they all know all this repertoire of music that I'd never been introduced to.
Yeah, and pitch is one of those things that also sets the table for musicality because when you decide you are going to play in tune, you also up your game to play with more authority and with more musicality, even if you don't possess all the skills to do it yet, but you want to, because you start to understand that there's a whole nother universe that gets people to listen, really listen, not just be present in the room, but actually listen to you. And that comes from there not being any pitch problems so that you have something to say that they will remember.
Oh yeah, and of course it has to be that to get the pitch right, to get the sound right, to get the fingering right, you need to do all the little things right. And it's always that if I'm not getting it to come out right, I don't hold my mouth quite right. I'm not sitting up right. I'm not breathing deep. I'm not putting through a good volume of air. And I just can't believe after 60 years of playing that I still have to remind myself of all these facts all the time. But there are just so many little things that go into playing it well. And it's true with every instrument. You can't avoid it by going to a simpler instrument or something like that. It must be terrible to play trombone because there's no set position for the slide. Every instrument is a guess. And I realized, no, I envy the trombone player because they've got the infinite ability to vary the pitch of the note to put it in tune. Where with a clarinet, they're somewhat set, and you have to kind of work to vary them a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's why the instrument has to play in tune with itself because you have to get the voicing in the right place. And if the instrument is in tune with itself, it will, when the voicing is set, it will not be correct. The pitch will be funny, right? And
Yeah.
then you start manipulating, and that's the whole thing you don't want to do, right? So a lot of times, I think people, when they go to work every day and they do the same things every day, or they have a set routine, they don't know what it's like to have to be fully present and recognize everything that's going on around them. And I think one of the things that you mentioned about noticing all these little things when you play is that it opens up your ability to really perceive where you are at in that second in time without judgment, hopefully, because if you judge, then you kind of fall off the wagon, right? You need to be able to be flexible enough to just let it pass you by and recognize what's wrong, but also to embrace that minute so that you can be at your optimal best right there and then. And I think that's also one of the things that music gives you.
Yeah, and I don't feel like I play with enough awareness. And fortunately, I've developed a friend that plays bass clarinet sitting next to me while I'm playing a contrabass clarinet. And she has had more professional training, went to USC under Mitchell Lurie, and she just has so much more awareness and she's critical. So she just bosses me, tells me, oh, you didn't do that right, or we're a long way from piano playing that note. They always say, you know, you learn best from playing with people better than you. So it's something that I look for. By the way, when you're talking about pitch, something came to mind. So when I had this embarrassing moment with an opera company, it was a group in a direction where I live opposite of where my band and orchestra were, and not in a direction that I usually travel to find musical groups. So I started with a new group this January, and they were also in that direction. And I went to my first rehearsal with them, and had a lot of E flat soprano clarinet, which is known to be a difficult instrument to play in tune. And at the end of the first rehearsal, the director looked at me and says, "Well, we're certainly delighted to have you join us because you're adding an instrument we didn't have. And it's so delightful to have somebody playing an E flat clarinet in tune." And I thought, my gosh, this is redemption to me in the place where I was disgraced just a year before. So,
Right. No, it's totally true, and actually, E-flat clarinet is one of the best things in the clarinet family that you could possibly play to work on your pitch because it is so precise, and it requires a lot from you to play it well, and so the instrument, as you know, we've gone back and forth about talking about this with barrels and other things about the E-flat that you recently got, but just helping people to understand how critical equipment is to the process of playing, and that was really for us the motivation behind Serial, but it's also a motivation to help people become more motivated, right? Because it inspires you when you realize that you can play and rise to a higher level if your instrument will perform.
oh, absolutely. And just this last week, I mean, I just received an E flat soprano from you, and I decided that I needed a slightly longer barrel than what I had, and I just got that last Saturday and put it on. I just feel so pleased because I've been through, I think, about 4 or 5 months from the day I said I want to replace my A flat clarinet to where I can say I have succeeded in finding something that plays as well in tune as I'd hoped and does all the other things I wanted as far as tone and responsiveness and ease of play. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff doesn't come easy. They, certainly, clarinet players are always searching for the ultimate setup. To people new to playing, setup means your reed, your mouthpiece, your ligature, um, barrel, the things that are small effects on the instrument. And no clarinet player can ever resist trying one more of any of those things because there's always a more perfect one possible.
Yes, there's an endless amount of gear, is there not? There is, but you don't have to be an equipment junkie for sure to get involved in it. You just need some guidance, and that brings me to my question: if somebody was listening to this and just loved your story, what would you say to them to get them to play a wind instrument right now?
Just try it. Just pick it up and just don't put all the thought in the world into, do I have time for this? Do I have a place for it? Do I really like this instrument? Just just start playing. I mean, there's so many identities that people commonly will take on in their lives. You might be thinking, well, I'm just going to play this for fun. I don't have to consider this to be my identity. Well, it may be, but you don't know. I mean, give it a try. I watch young people do this all the time and take on different styles of clothing or different activities or something. Well, this is just another one of those things. Try. Give it a shot. Give yourself a good shot. Get in a group. Uh, Consider having some private instruction as well as whatever the group offers you. Um, Try to give it attention that you play it a little bit every day. You don't play it an hour or two every day, but just give it a little bit of a shot every day so that you make progress because there's no faster way to feel good about it than know that it's coming along. That would be my message.